What is up, fight fans? Welcome to the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports. We are coming to you live from the number 38 presented by Volo. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Got my man, Danny Bailey, behind the boards with me as always. Guys, brand new edition of the Mile High Sports magazine is fresh off of the presses and has just launched out there. Make sure that you check that out. Very golf-centered edition of the magazine out there. So again, check that out, give it a look, support all things Mile High Sports, whether it is on the podcast side of things, the YouTube channel, the socials, the website itself. Please, your support is greatly appreciated. Smash that like, share, and subscribe button wherever possible there. It's a little bit of a dead time for the majority of the sports world out there. Fighting, naturally, we never have an off season. There's never really any downtime, and it is one of the biggest weeks of the year for us. But again, for any of those off-season headlines right now, as things ramp up toward training camp for the NFL or for college football with CU Buffs and Coach Prime, along with NHL off-season talk, Nuggets talk, give those guys at the Mile High Sports Network a check-in and a look along there. Also, you know, there's the Rockies that are pulling up the caboose here in the Mile High Sports area. 18-61 at this point. Atrocious. Worst team in the history of baseball. Plain and simple. Moving along from that, we're going to talk about the Colorado rundown of a few shows that are on the horizon here. If you have the opportunity to buy the tickets from the fighters in person, paper form, that's going to save you a couple of bucks of online fees and taxes in first place. 2, using either their direct paper purchase ticket or their promo code online gets them that commission for the sale for their ticket. For these amateurs, that is the only way that they're getting paid in the process. Please help support them so that they can grow their platform and their ability to draw bigger opportunities for themselves going forward. This weekend, there are multiple events that are going down here on the local side of things. On Friday night, you have our Colorado's all Muay Thai only exclusive promotion, 5280 Thai Fight Series. We're going to talk a little bit more about that card here coming up, but that is happening at the Stampede Friday night, cracking the doors at 6. Fights are going to be getting underway at 7. You have Saturday night's action with Battle MMA Championships going down at the Colorado Springs City Hub. We're also going to be speaking with one of the fighters that is going to be on that card, Relentless Chris LaLone, later on in the program. He was on the show last summer, right before he took on that King of Sparta lightweight amateur tournament. He proceeded to go on and win that and has had a very decorated amateur career that is built up to this moment where he's going to be entering the professional ranks. So keep it locked for that interview with him coming up here shortly. But check out the rest of that card on Saturday night at the Colorado Springs City Hub for Battle MMA Championships. Another fight that is on that card that to me is worth the price of admission alone. I mean, you could put this as a standalone, and I would go and pay my Patreon fee, whatever, if you will, for the Samuel Henriquez against Dylan King fight. That fight is a couple of bantamweights who are going to go out there with a killer be killed style and a striker's delight. Fans win. That is a fans win matchup. Everybody wins in the process there. Week off for the holiday next weekend for the 4th of July. Following from that, there is going to be multiple events going down. July 11th, UFC JJC back in action with our Grapple Games 2 event. There's going to be a cash bracket for our Grapple Games event for the weekend there. So be sure to keep it locked. We will have more information with all of the competitors and some more just promo content over the next couple of weeks for that show on lock here for you. We are also giving you the news that Sparta will be having their show on July 11th. There's going to be a couple of pro flyweights. I'm not sure if this is the main event, but there's going to be one side of this fight that sells a ton of tickets and draws a ton of people. He's been on the program here before. You have Oscar the Moisturizer Herrera going to be taking on Jay Ponder on that card. Again, that's going to be a flyweight matchup of a couple of pros in the area. And anytime Oscar fights on the local scene, he sells a ton of tickets. So much to the point that one year when Fury came out for a show, Oscar wasn't even on the card. And they advertised, oh, just come to the show because the Moisturizer will be here. Like, that's just kind of the way that he has marketed himself and built him in that sense. Little bit of a weekend recap coming along here for you. This one is a week late as far as the news, so I apologize for the delay on it, but do want to give some props to Bo Velikovic. He had a tremendous career. He's a Serbian fighter that is based out of Denver, or done a ton of fighting in his time or his training here out of Colorado and in the Denver scene, has made an impact on so many of the fighters throughout this Denver metro area footprint. Congratulations to you, Bo. It was a great run that you had in the UFC to going on over to Octagon. You know, I think that your impact on this next generation is certainly something that is felt by the people who have studied under you. And thank you for being a part of this combat sports community here in Colorado. You had Guerilla Fighting Championship making their successful debut for the promotion down in Pueblo at the Convention Center over the weekend. Darian Robinson got the win in the main event against AJ Robb. Nico, the Steel City Kid Cornejo, returned to the winner's circle in the co-main event. So congratulations to those guys there, picking up those big wins and, you know, doing a great job selling a show in Pueblo. It's not easy to sell tickets down there, but congratulations to Coach Mike Sesnalevich and the Sez family who put together that show. And they did it the right way by figuring out some of the right pieces in terms of big ticket sellers down there. You know, AJ Robb, no matter what show that he's on, sells a ton of tickets. Nico Cornejo sells a ton of tickets. That sets you up for success when guys who are in your main and co-main event slot sell a lot of tickets and do a lot of promotion. They're well-established veterans within the game. They know how to go out there and put themselves on the pedestal to be able to create buyer decisions in the marketplace. That's what it all comes down to. You know, I mean, we could have guys that have a lot of followers out there on social media. A lot was made of the PFL scandal of them allegedly buying followers, to the Ilya Topuria situation that was brought about that, oh, did he buy a bunch to make sure that his follower count coming into this week showed higher than Charles Oliveira? Does those follower counts translate into dollar signs? That's what it really kind of all circles back to. And that was the argument that people said, oh, with maybe like your O'Malley or whatever. The difference with someone like your Connors or your Rondas or whoever, those fellowships, they all translated into dollar signs. On the local side of things, you have a lot of guys who, you know, they may get a ton of social media pop, but maybe not the most in terms of when they come to sell tickets. Where on the flip side, you have some guys who have some decent reach digitally, but when it comes to selling tickets, a la your Chris Camozzi's of the world, your, as mentioned, your Oscar Herrera's, those sorts of guys, you know, Austin Jones's of the world, those guys have an impact that creates purchasing decisions. Those guys who did this down in Southern Colorado, AJ Robb, with his following that he has, they follow him wherever he goes and they buy tickets, win or lose. He was on the unfortunate side of that fight for his camp to the thrill of the Robinson side. Whereas on the flip, also Darian Robinson, being that it was a very Sez heavy show or their promotional backing, he also sells very well. So yeah, very good job for that family by putting together a great card to set them out for success. Got to give credit where credit is due. In the PFL, we saw a couple of friends of the program as well as Denver-based fighters have success on that show last weekend. Justin Wetzel punched his ticket to the finals. He had a grueling weight cut. I think he said it was something of upwards of 20+ hours in the weight cut of the process. That long head of hair, he shaved all the way down just to be able to make sure that he was going to make weight so that he could earn his opportunity in that PFL final opportunity. Got the win over Mondo Gutierrez in the process. You had Jenna Bishop. She also was able to secure the finish and get her opportunity at the finals for the PFL. You have Archie Colgan, who kept it in his perfect record. Yeah, you know, he's undefeated. The kid has moved to 12-0. Standout former Division I wrestler who has done a lot of his training down here in the Denver area. You know, a great dude all the way around, and went through the Bellator side of things. Once the PFL-Bellator merger happened, he has now continued to win, just fight after fight after fight since that point. And, you know, I'm looking forward to big things coming from Archie. This was what they build on that poster as a showcase fight for the division. I would hope to think that that sets him up for a very big opportunity next, whether it be name, financial, or both in the process. Again, at 12-0, he's starting to build himself some pretty solid steam in the division and in the space. So looking forward to seeing what's next there for Archie. In the LFA, we had friend of the program, little brother, Big Toe Jacoby Jones, have a dominant victory over a pretty hyped up catching chicken, if you will. Dude took extra time to be able to make weight. He had what looked like nasty staph all over his chest and his forearm. Also was a pain for all of the staff to deal with. Took forever to show up and was extremely late for his media opportunities with the promotion for the week. Was just a jerk to commission staff. You saw the way that the referee handled him. He was totally done with his crap right away as soon as the fight started. They gimmicked his gloves. You can never convince me that what happened with the glove situation in between the first and the second round wasn't done intentionally. I mean, the kid needed an extra, hour plus whatever it was, took the full extended timeline to be able to make his weight. You can't convince me that it wasn't. And I will give his corner credit that it was a veteran savvy move that they somehow were able to pull off to say that, oh, the gloves malfunctioned, or, there was a rip in the gloves to need to be repaired. Well, if there was a rip, they wouldn't have just been so easily Velcroed right back up by Cut Mandel Arbuckle in the process and to get the action back going. But in doing so, or in the glove unraveling, if you will, which just goes to me that they gimmicked it and didn't put it on right in the first place before getting it taped. They bought him a couple of extra minutes in between the first and second round for him to try to rally. It wasn't enough. He got dominated from pillar to post, and that was again a lights out, dominant shutout performance by Jacoby Big Toe Jones. Hopefully, he took a very deeply scrubbed shower after that, because it was a bloodbath. He did have him split open, and as angry as the way that staff looked, I mean, talking with his coach Rob Eberson, also in the process, a guy who was a veteran of the Ultimate Fighter and has been around the fight game for quite some time, now a coach out of the MMA lab down there in Phoenix, Arizona. He said that the way that looked, it was a very angry, active infection. So, how that cleared through physicals, hey, it happened. Jacoby had the opportunity to go out there, fight, won, so on. It is moved on from there. But again, nasty, gross. That kid was a dick. They were able to move on from him, and he is probably never going to see the LFA ranks again. You got to love to see it when somebody who just completely makes a fool of themselves gets beat down and gets their karma in the process. At Fury Fighting Championship down in Texas over the weekend, we had a Denver fighter make her highly anticipated pro debut. That was Monique Modeezy Dodson. She has fought for my show a couple of times, whether it be Combat Club, 5280 Muay Thai Fight Series. She is the type of fighter that she doesn't go out there just to win. Mo Dodson goes out there to hurt you. She has bad intentions. She is mean. She is nasty. And she wants to pull the old Marshawn Lynch, run through an MF her face. Well, that's exactly what she did. It took a little bit of time for her to get to this pro debut, had to overcome some adversity and some obstacles to get to this point. However, she delivered upon all expectations with a sensational highlight reel knockout over Leilani the Tsunami Hodges, who Leilani is also a tremendous fighter. She fought out here, had a big victory on the LFA card last October up in Vail. But Mo went out there and showed out. Massive knockout, especially considering that comes in the women's 115-pound division. No, Mo Dodson is she's a problem, and she just put the division on notice over the weekend. UFC was over in Baku over the weekend, which, considering the global conflict, if you go look at where Azerbaijan is on the map, it's like right in between Iran and Israel. So, yeah, very interesting that happened to be the location, just given the geopolitical conflict and structures that are going on out there. Thankfully, nothing happened. As it was reported from all personnel related to the UFC and people in the mix, it was a very beautiful country and, beautiful scenery all the way in the process that they were there. Just to talk about a couple of these matchups before we move on to get through everything, because this is a massive week with International Fight Week going on. Khalil Roundtree dominated, and I'm not surprised. I think that he is by far and large the more technical fighter than Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill's footwork was so flat and sloppy throughout that fight that, I mean, if you go back and you look throughout the course of his UFC tenure, Jamal really hasn't improved a whole lot with some of those little fundamentals. He's a home run hitter who happened to become a champion by virtue of circumstance. I will give him all due credit for being the champion and by being the willing and the game participant to step up in that moment when his number was called and capturing what was in front of him. Give him all due credit for that. But let's just revisit for a second how he got to that place in the first, to begin with. He would have never became champion. He would have never gotten the title shot in that moment if Ankalaev didn't lay an egg against Jan Blachowicz. If that fight doesn't go to a draw, if it's not a blunder in that sense that created such a sour taste in the fans as well as in the promotion's mouth, that in December of that year, with that fight as the draw, that they go ahead and say, well, we are going to go ahead and turn this title around, which is by virtue of this draw still open and up for grabs. We're going to put a title fight in Brazil next month between 43-year-old Glover and the number 8 ranked Jamal Hill. That's who was available then at the moment for that fight to take place. But again, that is how he was able to get the title shot. It's because the draw happened and the title was still vacant and they needed a headliner for the next pay-per-view. Oh, wow. Let's have Glover have a send-off down in Brazil. It just so happened to be convenient that that's where the destination of that next card was. And that, oh, well, here's a chance to potentially have our first champion ever to come from the Contender Series. This brash, smack-talking dude who defies conventional logic and is a very unorthodox fighter who has much more of, if you will, kind of a throwback to a Street Fighter style in a sense, that just throws bombs, and when he connects, it is devastating. I will give Jamal credit. He has power that is level 10 FU. But now that he's faced nothing but the tops of the top, his flaws, the holes in his game have been exposed. He has poor footwork. He doesn't work in longer chain combinations. He looks for one. He is hittable. There's so many different opportunities that are now on film that guys can go out there and exploit with Jamal Hill. He stays heavy down on his lead leg. Well, he gets chopped up now in the process. He was barely able to move on it after the first round against Khalil the other day. All due credit to him being just dog tough for making it through getting dropped multiple times and continuing to get back up and keep on fighting. But again, it's time to have that conversation that Jamal Hill was not that good to begin with. He is, again, a home run hitter who, when he lands, it is devastating. He is one of the premier knockout artists of this generation from the 205-pound division. But when we're talking about a complete skill set, he does not have that. He made his rise to prominence in a very down time of the division. It was in the vacated slot of a Jon Jones. It was in the timeline of the multiple knockouts of your Dominic Reyes. There was a bit of a power gap or a vacuum, if you will, at the top of the division. Give him credit for being the champion when he was and by capitalizing on the opportunity that was there for him. But Jamal Hill's time at the top, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be a gatekeeper, and he's going to be someone who, give him a 50-50 shot in a striker's delight against some guys who maybe are going to be willing to brawl it out. But if you give him your technical strikers out there, like your Khalil Roundtrees of the world, like your Paredes, guys who are unorthodox but still very skilled strikers like Yuri, we've seen what happens when he faces the top of the division. What's next for him? Who does he beat? at the top of the division? Answer me that, please. Hit my line. Comments from the Peanut Gallery on Instagram or Threads. I want to know who you think in the top 10 right now Jamal Hill beats. Please tell me that. Also want to mention from that card, you had Muhammad Naimov, who trains out of Denver. He was successful in his 5th of 6 trips to the octagon. Rounding all of that off real quick, just like I say, we got so much to talk about this weekend. We have 5280 Muay Thai Fight Series 36 that is going down at the Stampede this Friday night. Cracking those doors at 6 p.m. Fights are going to be getting down at 7. You have, in the main event, we have Brittany Medina taking on Taylor Burrell. It's a couple of highly experienced ladies that are going to be getting after it in our main event there. A combined more than 10 plus fights. So, for this being an amateur showcase card, that's a lot of experience that you're getting to see between those two, and they go after it. You have Lewis Rogel taking on Liam Kinney. Liam Kinney, the young teenage kid coming out of McMahon up there in Fort Collins, fought for us, a couple of cards ago, and this kid is all gas, no brakes. He is coming out right away, shot like he was out of a cannon, and I think that you see him going up against a very experienced Rogel who's coming out of Havoc MMA, a newer gym, but a very respected camp, especially given all the personnel that they have over there in Westminster. That is a clacker in the co-main right there. You have Ryan Lynch taking on Nehemiah Richardson out of Prodigy House Muay Thai. Husseini versus Streeter. You have Matt Ramos out of Fusebox Sambo taking on Pedro Lopez of Factory X. Definitely excited to see that one. Pedro was supposed to fight on the last 5280 card, and his opponent had unfortunately had to pull out just days before the fight. So, yeah, this is a highly anticipated debut for Pedro. It's a kid who's been putting in the work for quite some time now. You have Christ Yobwe taking on Jalen Vasquez. Braden Johnson taking on Liam Barbach. And then rounding off the card, jerking the curtain, we have Connor Toot taking on Giovanni Lujan. Again, this is going to be going down Friday night. All Muay Thai, Colorado's only Muay Thai exclusive promotion, 5280 Muay Thai Fight Series 36. It's going to be going down at the Stampede over in Aurora off of Havana Street, cracking the doors at 6, getting the fights going at 7. We will see you there for that. And then moving along to the big attraction of the weekend, you have UFC 317 International Fight Week. It is going down in Las Vegas. You have the vacant lightweight title, the coveted 155-pound strap, on the line between Ilia Topuria taking on Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Ilia Topuria, former champion at 145 pounds, vacated to be able to move up to 155. Charles do Bronx Oliveira, former champion at 155, trying to reclaim that gold. A fan favorite when we're looking at Charles do Bronx, the guy who has the most finishes in UFC history, someone who is definitely had quite the journey in the UFC, was in there at a young age, had his ups and downs at 145, goes up to 155 and just goes on a meteoric rise and a tear that sees him achieve the pinnacle of the sport by becoming undisputed UFC champion. The champ has a name, and his name is Charles do Bronx Oliveira. For a guy who speaks no English, he rose to a level of superstardom that was kind of unprecedented in our modern era. He's a guy who still maintains a high level of fellowship and fan appreciation. But I think that Charles Oliveira has his hands full this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. And don't get me wrong, I love Charles Oliveira. And I think that in terms of being the more well-rounded guy, I do think that it is Charles. But when we're taking a look at Ilia Topuria, his power is something that I think will be the difference maker when it comes to this matchup. We've only seen him fight one time in the UFC at 155 pounds, and that was against Jai Herbert, who Jai is good fighter, but he is far from being an elite championship caliber guy like Charles Oliveira is. However, Charles is hittable. And a lot of Charles' big victories, he gets cracked early and then he rallies to get the finish beyond that. I don't know that you can just weather getting cracked from somebody like Ilia Topuria. The unknown in this is how well that power translates at 155. The one thing that I will offer, though, is that Topuria is not a one-hit type of guy. Yes, he does have that one-shot power that can put you out in that sense, but I say that he's not a one-hitter in the sense of that's not what he throws. He's not just throwing like a one big overhand, not like your Josh Emmets or those types of the world. He throws long chain combinations. He will throw a couple of non-committal shots, reset his footwork, find his entry, maybe a level change, a slip, a roll, whatever it may be, and then pop, pop, pop. Then he's coming with the power. He has broken our hearts in his last two fights by knocking out Alexander Volkanovski and Max Bless Holloway. I think that he will do so once again on Saturday night by knocking out Charles Oliveira. That all being said, if he doesn't knock Charles out, Charles could very well finish him. We know that Ilia's approach is very boxing heavy, and maybe Charles has the game plan to be able to work against that. Ilia has never had a take, or excuse me, he's never had a kick to the leg, never had a kick to, or excuse me, never a kick to the body, never kick to the head. So we know that he's going for the boxing. We know he's a power puncher, and he's trying to find the kill that way. Whereas, again, Charles is a clean boxer. His Muay Thai is crisp, and he has the best submission skills on the entire roster, as evidenced by his resume. It's a matter of, can Charles weather the storm? And I don't know if he can be the bull to the matador. I don't know. I don't know if the bull gores the matador in this process. I think that Ilia Topuria has just too much power, and again, he throwing combinations as opposed to just a one-shot type of power. I think that is what will set up the ultimate finish for him in the process. Shop your value. I think that if Charles wins, it is going to be by a finish. I don't know that that as a whole, in general, I don't know that this fight is going to go 25. I think that it's probably a safe bet if you're looking for your value out there on the books, figuring out that this fight closes inside of the 5, inside of 25 minutes. I think that that's probably a pretty safe bet out there. Shop your best value. What do you guys think, though? Let me know. That's comments from the Peanut Gallery on Instagram or on Threads. You have a co-main event matchup between Alexandre Pantoja and Kai Kara-France. This is a rematch. Pantoja did win the first time, Ultimate Fighter victory. That is, he's also became one of the most decorated champions in the 125-pound division. I think that Pantoja wins this fight again. You know, hey, Kai is an exciting guy, but I don't think that he has the tools to be able to beat Pantoja in this matchup. Plain and simple. Also on the card, you have in that feature slot, you have Brandon Raw Dog Royval. You know, wherever, I don't know, find the angle off of the camera right there. But shout out to the hometown kid, Brandon Royval. He is fighting against Joshua Van. This was originally scheduled to be against Manel Kopp. Manel Kopp got hurt a couple of weeks ago, fracture in his foot during a sparring session. Joshua Van, one of the hot names in the 125 division, fresh off of victory at UFC 316, gets a massive opportunity as the number 12 guy to take on the number 1 guy in the division in Brandon Royval. Huge risk for Brandon, but at the same time, I talked to Brandon just the other day. You know, I mean, we live in the same neighborhood. We're right at the dog park. And he said, hey, like, the thing is, at the end of the day, like, I'm better than all of these guys, so I don't have a problem going out there and beating him and proving that. But yeah, I do recognize that it's not really much of a gain for me. Like, I'm just defending my post in this position to stay active. The Kopp fight, with him being a little bit more of an established veteran with a little bit more prestige to his resume, if you will, that would have potentially solidified or guaranteed. But either way, I think that Brandon, he has to get the next title fight, no matter what. Like, I don't know what else the kid has to do. He's the #1 ranked guy, has been #1 ranked for quite some time now, goes out there and has another impressive victory this weekend. That title fight has to be made, especially if Kai were to somehow pull off the upset against Pantoja. Who has a win against Kai Kara-France? Who has a win that was one of the fights of the year that year against Kai Kara-France? Who had a 50K bonus winning finish against Kai Kara-France? Brandon Raw Dog Royval. So the best thing for all of us here is that we can hope that Kai wins, but yeah, that's the dynamic of those two showcase flyweight matchups on this International Fight Week card. You also have Moni Moicano taking on Beneil Dariush on this card. Hey, that's a couple of long in the tooth veterans in the 155-pound division. That's a fun fight. I'm excited to see that matchup. And especially anytime that you get Moicano after a win, that's a must-see interview. Plain and simple. Show me the money. Peyton Talbot looking to bounce back after taking his first loss against a very tough opponent, Felipe Lima. On the prelims, a couple of matchups to keep your eyes on. You have Jack Hermanson making his return against RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez. World champion grappler on one side of things in Gregory Rodriguez, as well as one of the most skilled and just crafty, unique submission guys in the 185-pound division in Jack Hermanson. I mean, he has a guillotine that is so slick that it has its own name in the grappling world, but he's so damn good at it himself that it's essentially been renamed to the Hermanson guillotine after him because he's so good at that particular submission. This is a fight against a guy in RoboCop who also has the ability to put anybody's lights out on any given punch at 185 pounds. But Jack's a gamer on the feet just the same. I'm interested in seeing how this matchup unfolds to cap off the prelims on Saturday. You have a couple of flyweight prospects who are on the rise. Excuse me, featherweight prospects on the rise. You have Hyder Amil taking on Jose Delgado. A matchup that I'm sure, fellas, you're all kind of looking forward to this one. I mean, let's call it for what it is. You're watching when Tracy Cortez fights. Tracy Cortez taking on Viviane Araujo. You have what is looking to be a very fan-friendly matchup between Terrence T-Rex McKinney and Vyacheslav Borshev, Slava Claus out of Team Alpha Male. Both guys who want to go out there and have highlight reel knockouts. Slava Claus, the kickboxing specialist, and Terrence McKinney, the owner of fastest knockout in UFC lightweight history. This is a don't blink type of matchup, if you will, anytime that Terrence McKinney is in there. He's either going to knock you out or he's getting knocked out. So one way or the other, it's an entertaining fight. Keep your eyes on. On the early prelims, I don't know why Nico Price took this fight, man. You got to like Nico Price. He's such a great spirit and an all-around jovial guy, but he's taking on Jacoby Smith, who is 10-0, undefeated, collegiate wrestling D1 standout who was a complete murderer on the regional scene, coming up through the ranks of Fury, then gets in through Contender Series, gets into the UFC. Very, very tough fight for Nico Price. It's also going to be a good test for Jacoby Smith. I mean, hey, the kid is going to have to see what he has against a veteran like that. And then opening up the card, you have a couple of guys making their debut, which is a peculiar situation. And it all kind of rose about because of a couple of fallouts in the process. You have Chris Ewert taking on Jackson McVeigh. You had dumbass Shadrikas Dumas, who was supposed to be in that slot, which crazy, that he's even on the roster. But if we're going to give him the Greg Hardy treatment and keep on giving him undefeated guys or these killers who are 100% finish rates to go in there and beat him up, I'm cool with that. Just because of how trash of a human Dumas is. And that is supported by the reason why he can't fight. Now, the UFC hasn't put out a statement of this officially, but the reports that were given this morning throughout the news outlets were that he could not fight this weekend because he could not get the judge to remove the ankle monitor in relation to his most recent arrest. Dumbass. I don't know how many times we have to say that, but Shadrikas Dumas, 14 plus arrests in 12 years now down there in the same county in Florida. Yeah. Every bit of criticism that goes this dude's direction is earned and is due. Plain and simple. Moving along from that, we're going to go into Kurtz's corner right now. And this is crazy that this is how this topic has unfolded. But I believe that as it relates to the Jon Jones retirement, the worst is still yet to come. You would think that, in that sense, the saying would be, oh, the best is yet to come for the perceived Michael Jordan, or the guy by merit, by what he did in the sport itself, his accomplishments, his resume, the guys that he beat, being the youngest champion ever, going on the illustrious run that he did. He is in the cage, has been widely touted as the greatest. In any sport, when you have these even just generational greats, their retirement announcement is usually in the form of some sort of public appearance, press conference, something of that nature that has a little bit of pomp and circumstance to it, that gives them their flowers, gives flowers to those who brought them along the way, all of that. Not a throwaway announcement in the middle of a press conference from an international fight card. I don't doubt, despite whatever Jon's lawyer says, I don't doubt that they got tipped off of the news of the charges related to the February accident where he allegedly fled from a car accident where there was a woman who was naked from the waist down, where they were allegedly on magic mushrooms and drinking and got into an accident and he fled on foot. I believe that they got tipped off that this news was about to break. And that's why this comes out in this sense. I think that they chose to get ahead of it. They are, from the UFC side of things, to Jon Jones, with as much trouble as he's been in through the years, they become somewhat masters of navigating the waters of a PR crisis. There's no defending this from any side. Like the sequence of the retirement, or from the way that Jon prolonging the retirement, or the UFC prolonging that announcement. There's no defending any of that. There's no defending the alleged actions of Jon in this process and his conduct there. But I ask this question, which I think is the better question of it all, is how in the hell did they manage to keep this under wraps since the middle of February? You have arguably the most famous resident in all of Albuquerque, who is notorious for his run-ins with the law, who this is now multiple times where there is hit and run incidents, where he has fled, substance abuse issues where he is threatening authority figures. This is multiple times that this has happened now, but they were able to keep it under wraps for 4+ months. That's probably the most impressive thing out of all of this, was that there was none of this ever mentioned, or none of this was leaked out to the media. No, even just, hey, this is kind of the tea that's going on. There was none of that for all of this time. That's crazy to me. I'm no voice analysis expert by any means, and my testimony surely would not hold up in a court of law. But you don't have to be a smooth brainer to listen to those videos from the cops' body cam footage to know that it's Jon on the other end of those calls. He doesn't answer the question when the cops ask, is this Jon Jones that we're talking to? When he's incoherently rambling on and he's threatening the cops and saying that, oh, his people have done worse for less and blah, blah, blah. You know who it is. Come on now. Let's be honest here. This circles back, though, to Jon's statement a few weeks back about him saying that he was retired and he had already let the UFC know what his plans were, but they hadn't moved on because him being marketed or sold as the champion was more profitable and something that gave them a little bit more leverage with these TV deal negotiations. There might be something to all of that. Might be a little bit of something to all of that there, that they were kind of holding on to this news from being broke for a while. What sucks about it all, though, is because of that and the way that this all unfolded, you've honey-dicked Tom Aspinall for 2 years now. You've strung him along in this process, and Jon throughout this time, and Dana has been very gracious throughout the time. And speaking of Jon, well, Jon was asking for his FU money. Well, they got it. Every demand that Jon asked for to make this fight, they did. And then ultimately the fight doesn't happen. This legal situation goes about. And it all kind of makes sense now that Jon's not really thinking about the fight. He has all this legal stuff that's now going on or happening in the background. He was over in Thailand living his best life, sniffing dudes' hairs on the back of little tote goats and weird stuff like that. So fighting is not on Jon Jones's mind. And to be contrary to what Stephen A. Smith said that, oh, he owed the fans this fight, he owed people this, he owed the organization. Jon Jones doesn't owe anybody that fight. That fight doesn't take away from what Jon's legacy is as an actual champion or what Jon Jones did inside of the cage, and it doesn't take away from who he beat and how he beat them and in the timeline that he did. Remember, the youngest champion ever in history. Say everything that you want about him outside of the cage, and you can't defend him anymore at this stage. But his actual accomplishments inside of the octagon are unquestionable. The thing about Jon is, though, at this stage in his late 30s, still getting in trouble for the dumb stuff that he did in his 20s, he's never had to truly pay the piper and face consequences for his actions. And by that, I mean, he's never had to be truly, incarcerated for a period of time for these hit and runs or for some of these threats that he's made, or in this sense, like he threatened to kill cops, allegedly. Throw that allegedly tag out there. Protect us here legally. You know what I'm saying? But it's not the first time. And he said on the call directly, like you can hear, he said, "You're not the first guy that I've threatened this year." Well, this was February. So what are we talking about? But again, I think that it is all circles back to my original statement for this segment. The worst is yet to come for Jon Jones. Moving from there, we're going to burn through 3 rounds before we get to our last segment with our Chris LaLone interview. Real quick, Danny, 3 rounds. First round, what do we have?
All right, Jordan, in MMA adjacent news, the Liver King has been arrested for making terroristic threats towards Joe Rogan. Did you see the meltdown unfold?
Oh, that was like a full-on multi-day manic breakdown that the Liver King had on social media. I mean, posting just like 15, 20 plus minute videos at a clip of him just going nuts, taking dumps on the floor, coffee enemas. But what's crazy to me is like he has this cameraman who's like egging him on in the process, and his wife and kids are there and they're like all in on this. Like, is this like I'm glad that the cops finally got called, because there were multiple videos where he was threatening Rogan crazily. Someone who is he was very definitely in a not right state of mind. I mean, the dude's pupils were dancing all over his eyes. His mouth was blue, like he just got done. I'll spare the details on that one. I'll keep the censor in there. But yeah, his mouth was completely blue. Let's just say that. So whatever concoction of crazy things that he is on, I mean, it's already known like the $12K a month in pharmaceuticals that he was taking from the performance enhancer side to whatever other stuff that he may be on that's had him tweaked out ridiculously at this stage. No, that is that very much a cause for concern, and somebody who needed to be arrested and put onto a psychiatric hold, because he's not just a danger to himself in that state. He's one of those guys who I think was very well at a point to where he could have dissociated, and you turn around and next thing you know, you have a room full of bodies with blood splatter all over the wall. That is not good. Like, again, if you didn't see it, check out the social media. If those posts are still up, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. He's like crawling around on all fours, going completely crazy in the process. Absolutely needed to be arrested, and I'm surprised that it took that long for the cops to actually be there and to take action.
Netflix is set to move forward with a Ronda Rousey biopic. Any reaction?
I think it's awesome. Ronda is definitely a very polarizing figure out there, but she deserves to have something like that to showcase the incredible work that she did as a pioneer and an ambassador of the sport, not just as a woman, but for MMA as a whole. Prior to Ronda Rousey, the barriers in mainstream media that were transcended were never to that degree. Then naturally, she paved the grounds for Conor to come and this hit the ground running beyond that. But all the stuff that Ronda did, from the daytime talk shows to magazines, blockbuster films, that was all stuff that was unprecedented at the time, and especially for a female within the space. No, Ronda Rousey deserves to have the recognition as that pioneer, as that woman who was the very first superstar of women's MMA and someone who took the sport as a whole to an entire new level.
Glory kickboxing star Jamal Ben Sadiq has been sentenced to 40 months in prison for money laundering and forgery over 1 million euros. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it was a great scheme until he got caught. I guess as they all are in that sense. He did it through a bunch of fake employment contracts and some other fraudulent measures. Police discovered this through investigations where they uncovered a large amount of cash and a bunch of forged documents. All things considered, 40 months, that's, 3.5 years, especially if they didn't get all the money. If he was smart and had some of that and some untraceables, it might not be the worst of outcomes in the world, but you didn't hear that from me, I guess. We're only on record here for the whole world to hear us. But folks, that wraps up our talks on the segment there today for 3 rounds. We want to move along to our final segment of the day. We're going to be transitioning over to an interview with relentless Chris LaLone. Chris LaLone is going to be making his pro debut this weekend, Saturday night at the Colorado Springs City Hub for Battle MMA Championships. Danny, we have that interview queued up. All right. Well, folks, here in the studio, we'll see you next week, same time, same place. But make sure that you give this interview some love. Go check out Chris this weekend. I'm Jordan Kurtz. Give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Denny, thank you so much.
With millions of page views every year, ColoradoPreps.com is the #1 source for the high school sports community to keep up with the latest news and scores. From football and volleyball to basketball and softball, ColoradoPreps.com provides a year-round hub for coaches, friends, and family to stay connected to their favorite schools and athletes, and keep an eye on their rivals. Covering high school sports from the peaks to the plains, you always get the latest at ColoradoPreps.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports. I'm Jordan Kurtz here alongside a returning friend of the program. He has a special appearance going on for us here today, International Fight Week for all of those who are following along, but it's Fight Week here on the local side too as well. We have my man, relentless Chris LaLone. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, my friend. How are you doing?
Man, it's a crazy time to be a fight fan right now. I mean, we've got Muay Thai fights here on the local side of things this week. We've got MMA. We've got International Fight Week with Colorado people here on big stages trying to fight for a potential fight or a title fight this weekend. So it's a great time to be a fight fan in Colorado, man. I'm happy.
Oh, I'm excited too. Like I said, I got my competition coming up this weekend, got some of my friends' competition. Obviously, like you said, we got International Fight Week this weekend. So big weekend for everyone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So that all being said, why don't you give us the details of what you have going on this weekend?
So this Saturday night, I'm actually going to be making my pro MMA debut. I've been fighting actively for, God, almost 9 years now, just as an amateur, whether starting at 14 years old. I'm 23 now. We made that decision to make that leap into the pro circuit. So I'm excited to do that. I'll be fighting on Battle Mixed Martial Arts, the Battle MMA Championships, in my pro debut at 155, and I'm excited to go out there and showcase all my skills on a different circuit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is after a very, storied MMA career on the amateur side of things out here in Colorado, belts under multiple promotions, winning the, striking competitions to your time with USA Kickboxing. How has all of that just kind of, what you mentioned that you guys all decided and you have a very tight knit camp and people around you. Your parents were both fighters and are very, very involved in your career. What exactly was it that made you think that, okay, right now is the time to make that jump?
It just so I set a goal for myself that I wanted to complete college. I was able to finish with my bachelor's degree, and that was during that time though. I wanted to get as much experience as I could, whether that was fighting internationally on the kickboxing side or fighting down here on the regional side with very tough fights. I know the last time we had spoke on a on the interview, I was getting ready for the King of Sparta tournament, and I had the opportunity to be able to fight in that and actually win the whole thing. So I've been through a lot of tough competition, and I've had a lot of tough fights over the course of my amateur career. And I think just, with the timing lining up and everything falling into place, it was time to make that leap.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so on this card, you have multiple teammates too on it as well, right?
I do, yes. I have both my teammates, Dylan Ruane and Devin McGinley, both fighting for titles as well. Devin McGinley in the main event, fighting for the 170-pound title, and Dylan Ruane fighting for the 155-pound title. And which is funny because I actually held the 155-pound title as an amateur, and I'm super glad to see that it's staying real tight, close within my group. And we're going to be taking home 3 wins that night and 2 belts. I'm really excited.
That's awesome. Now, I know that it's kind of a mixed feeling situation for some people, and it may not be as big of a factor for you, just being that you have so many fights on the Team USA kickboxing side of things where you're all going in one day sort of situation. But I know that there's some guys who they're not as much of a fan of fighting with multiple teammates on the card, and there's some who, yeah, the more the better. Does that play any sort of impact for you? Maybe not necessarily in preparation, because I feel like it does help with everybody when you're all trying to kind of redline or peak on the same night. But also on the flip side, though, there's kind of the situation of, well, on fight night, some people want all the attention on them. Like they want all the undivided, attention from the coaches to whatever. Whereas if you have 3, 4 teammates on the card, maybe some are thinking, well, are they collectively or are they right here with me? Does that play any impact for you
Mm-hmm.
at all?
Not for me, just because I've whether it's the international competitions, I fought with as many as 30 teammates fighting in one day to myself only fighting on one night. I think it's very special to have 2 of my best friends being able to fight with me alongside, like I said, Dylan and Devin. And I've had my time in the spotlight. I've had my time to be able to be the main event, the co-main event, to be the big fights, to have all the attention on me. And I'm just very grateful that these 2 can now both co-headline the fight night with Devin in the main event and Dylan in the co-main event. It's very, I love to see it. And, I'll have my time I'll have my time on Saturday night, but I also want them to have their time. And I know that they're more than capable of it and they're more than ready for it. And I think it's very nice. As I'm very blessed to be able to share that night with them. We've been training hard for these last couple of weeks, and we're going to do some work on Saturday night.
Beautiful. I love to hear it, man. And you mentioned that you finished up school. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank
So
thank you.
that all said, what does everything transition into for you? How does that all turn, or what's next? Obviously trying to make a run with everything and fighting as a professional is a big deal and is the ultimate
Yes.
goal. But you're also
Mhm.
someone who is very multifaceted with a lot of goals and aspirations all across the
Yes.
board. Last time that we talked, you were involved with some different performing arts and some things of that nature. So what all is next, and how do you balance everything now that you're a professional?
I think it's the same goal, and I think it's very, and I appreciate you saying that. Thank you for saying that. It's truthfully, it's nothing new that I haven't always done. I've always felt like I've kept my time busy, and I've always wanted to be involved in something else outside of fighting. Fighting's always been a part of my life, and it's a very big part, but it's not my whole identity. And now that I've graduated, I always wanted to make sure I had an education, just because you can't always fight forever and you can't always be a high level athlete, so you have to fall back on the things that you've done. While with that, I felt I want to fall back on my education. I have a full-time job now at UCCS. The college down here, which I'm very grateful for. I'm still involved in the performing arts, whether that's acting and modeling, and then just making sure that I'm making the connections that I can have along the way, just so once I'm done fighting and once I'm done competing at that high level, I have more things to fall back on. I just don't stop fighting, and I'm however old I am, trying to figure life out.
I think that you hit on something really important there, that, it's a level of maturity within the process that not a lot of guys reach at your age, but, it probably could be attributed to, being a second generation fighter, to all of the time that you've spent directly within it. But, and we had this talk a few weeks ago at a graduation party that we were sitting at, but we all have our masks, right? We have our masks that we wear out to the world. But I think that you can so comfortably be able to separate yourself from a lot of that because you have so much experience. You know, when you're going in and when you're clocking in and when it's time to fight, it's just another day at the job. Like it's another day on the job, you know, with as many times in competition that you've had throughout the different disciplines and platforms of martial arts. It's something that you maybe don't necessarily get wrapped up in so much of the aggro. Oh, I need to just absolutely have nothing but, you know, piss and vinegar and hatred and vitriol
Yes.
for this entire time. Like you can separate yourself from that side of it pretty well.
No, I feel that same way. And, thank you for bringing that up because I'm such a big advocate for that, for even talking to people outside of the fighting realm who don't really understand it, that it's not all just aggro people who are just hyped up on fighting and only want to, kill or be killed. Like it's truly nothing like that. There are people that are that way, but the majority of fighters are not. The majority of fighters, I'm sure that you've met in your personal life, are very cool guys that they have their own ambitions and goals. And I think once you start getting people that only solely focus on one thing, it becomes a rude awakening. That once they lose that, they have nothing else to fall back on. I know for myself, I've always wanted to be the way that I've always wanted to be disciplined in everything that I do, and whether that's fighting or whether that's in the performing arts, whether that's in my personal life, in my relationship life, I've always wanted to feel disciplined in that, and I'm very grateful that I have a strong community around that, especially with the fighting, with Devin, Dylan, my younger brother, my younger brother Matthew, another teammate of ours named Jace Graves. Like we have a very strong, tight knit bond that I'm very grateful to have.
That's
Who keep
awesome.
me accountable for everything.
It takes a village, right? It's an individual sport and you're in there by yourself, but it takes that entire team, that village, whatever, if you will, to be able to get you to that point.
Of course.
So
So
as
I'm very, very excited.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Now, as we're tying up these final days of camp and getting up to the old dreaded weight cut, I got to ask this
Yes.
question because it's something that's pretty unique across the board. What is the hardest thing for you to give up while you're in camp? You mentioned the discipline aspect of it, and you're always in shape. You're never really not out of the gym or not training, but obviously there's those certain things. Well, maybe I got to give up an extra little bit of ice cream a few weeks out, or an extra, carbs or something like that. Everybody has something that they kind of got to take out that you suffer a little bit during camp. What is that for you?
Truthfully, I wish it could be the food. I wish it could be, anything, physical. For me, it's just, I'm a very social person. So being in social environments and being able to go hang out with my friends, that's kind of hard to have to sacrifice sometimes, is because I miss out on moments that I feel for myself are big, and they're bonding experiences and they create memories. So sometimes I have to miss out on those. Actually good segue into that. One of my really good friends from I grew up with is actually going to be at the NBA draft on Wednesday. He's going to be participating in that, and I was originally going to go out to go watch him, but I have my own dreams and my own goals that I have to work towards, so that's something I have to sacrifice for that. But I'm glad that I have good people around me who understand that, who don't ever make me feel bad for ever having to miss something. That just shows a testament to the tightness circle that I have around me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Gotta love to hear that.
Yeah.
Now, for you, Chris, for this camp or for this time leading into this fight in this professional debut, is there a song, maybe a lyric of a song, a passage from a book, maybe a Bible quote, a quote in general, something of that sort that is telling the tale of Relentless for this camp?
I actually say it a lot, and I forgot that it was a lyric. I forgot that it's something I always kind of said, but I forgot it was a lyric until I heard it. It was from a song that I don't remember what song it is, but I hear it every once in a while. It goes, this is just the intro. Let me not get ahead of myself. I think I have so much untapped potential that I'm ready to find. I just haven't found it yet, and I think there's so many people that don't know the name Relentless Christopher LaLone yet, but they will. And like I said, we're just getting started, and there's no reason to get ahead of myself. I'm right on track with where I need to be, and Saturday night is just going to prove that. And just looking forward to next steps and reaching the pinnacle of my performance and my ability.
Awesome. Awesome. Very well said, my man. Always well put together and well presented whenever you're in the media there. So love to see that from our side of things. We appreciate the fighters like you who are willing to do these sort of things with us. Now, as we tie this up here, is there anybody that you want to thank or give a shout out to, teammates, coaches, sponsors, family, anybody?
Always thankful to all my supporters, all my families, all my sponsors who've helped me get through this camp. My family, who's always helped me support my dreams, and no matter what I wanted to do in life, they just wanted me to be happy. And I think I'm very grateful that they allow me to do this. To all my friends who understand that sometimes, like I said, I do have to sacrifice time with them because they know I'm chasing my dreams. To my teammates who helped me get through this. All the people that I've named, all the people down in Pueblo, up in Denver, and just God himself for giving me the strength to go out there and perform, and the courage and the heart to be who I am.
Where can people watch you, and how can they purchase tickets, pay-per-view, any of that sort?
You can follow me on Instagram, Christopher LaLone. All my social media is under that name: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of that. Saturday night down here in Colorado Springs, Battle MMA Championships, my pro debut. Make sure to come check it out. I promise it's going to be an exciting fight. Devin McGinley, Dylan Ruane fighting that night as well. It's going to be a good night. Thank you again, Jordan, for having me.
Absolutely. There you have it right there, folks. Make sure that you give them a follow and check out the action this Saturday night for Battle MMA Championships. You have them right there. That is Relentless Christopher LaLone. I'm Jordan Kurtz. Stick around for more combat sports here on the MMA Plug presented by Mile High Sports.